Acts of kindness, everybody. Thanks for joining us here on ESPN Esports. This is Behind the Wheel, our weekly ESPN Esports Rocket League program. Thank you very much for joining us every single Monday at 3 p.m. Eastern. This is a collaborative effort, folks. We want to make this a show that the Rocket League community embraces and enjoys. And you've been definitely giving us our feedback, from even naming the show to giving us ideas on topics and segments that we will do every single week, and also guests that you want to see. And one name that definitely kept popping up as we get to week 3 of the show is Lawler, but he is not here this week. Instead, we have the one and only Liefx joining us. I'm kidding, buddy. It's an all-Canadian show. Are you kidding me? How can I not be pumped? Kitchener, Ontario, represent, man. How you doing?
I'm doing great. You got me hard on the bait. I'm like, oh, here goes my name. Get ready, smile, and Lawler. You got me good. Yeah, no, this is hype. This is great, man. I've had a blast doing some shows with you in the past, so I'm glad to talk some Rocket League, because there is a lot of Rocket League.
Yes, there is a lot to get to, but we have to get to the most important part of the show, at least what I think will be the most important part of the show. Don't sleep on it, folks. No fluff here. It's time to get to a very special announcement. Leaf, you have something to declare. You have something to announce. This is major. This is blockbuster. This will change the course of Rocket League forever. Everything will be different after you make this announcement. The floor is yours.
So, something important happened the other day. A big moment in my life was leaked onto the Rocket League broadcast, and I've decided to just bring it to the public light and share it here on ESPN first. My sequin pillow has arrived, and it's time to do the big reveal of what's underneath. I've been talking about this on the broadcast.
No,
so much. I don't think it turned out really well, but it is.
Come on.
Our dabbing Gibbs from previously, I think season 2, I think Amsterdam. a little scuff there, but we got our dabbing Gibbs sequin pillow. I had to get it. That's going on my Gibbs shrine. I'll be right behind me during the broadcast. Do not worry. You'll get to see lots of this, guys.
How do you even get a sequin pillow with a graphic on it? How did that even, where'd you get that?
Very expensively from someone on Etsy, I think it was. Yeah, it's not cheap. It is not cheap to get this.
Well, it's worth it.
It is well worth it. So now me and Turtle got our Gibbs sequin pillows. We're brothers in sequins, and hopefully this starts a trend of Gibbs in backgrounds of people's camera shots.
I mean, now we all have to get one. Gibbs dabbing has to be the thing from now on. Does Gibbs have an emote? Like, is that an emote?
It actually is. I'm gonna throw it in chat right now since we're live.
Yeah, let's do that.
I'm gonna throw you this one. He's actually giving me permission to use this emote on my channel, because he doesn't. I literally subscribe to him just for this. I only subscribe to Gibbs just for that emote.
Can I copy and paste this? Oh no, I can't. I did. The words just come up because I don't have the F in the chat for that. All right, so now we got that out of the way. So that's going to be in your background for all RLCS broadcasts in the future, right?
I will have my Gibbs shrine over here where the guitar is. I don't know if you can see that on the broadcast here, but it'll be to my side, and hopefully it'll show up during interviews during the wide shot. So it will be on my shrine, 100%.
We got a lot to get to on this program. And by the way, feel free, you in the community and Twitch chat, you've been very vocal about what you want to see from this program, different segments, etc. Please continue to give us feedback, whether it's on Twitter at ESPN_esports or in chat. One of the big pieces of feedback that we heard from the first couple of weeks was we want more rankings. We actually want to see NA and EU rankings at the same time. So later on in the program, Leaf has prepared his top 5 for NA and EU. So you get both of them. See, we listen here at ESPN Esports. Speaking of listening, listen to this. Space Station Gaming, victorious again. Space Station Gaming on a roll. They are doing quite well in Season X. They defeated NRG in the finals of the regionals, the most recent regionals that occurred in North America, 4-1. They looked very good. But my question to you is, particularly the final, which maybe it was a little bit closer at times than the scoreline might suggest, but Space Station definitely still running away with it. Was this more Space Station just being dominant, or was it NRG not being in their full form?
It was a bit of both. And I think I'm pretty sure Garrett G tweeted out afterwards just to confirm that too. That they came in with full steam, but they had that big break in between. And we talked to them on an interview during RLCS where we said, "Hey, what do you do to make sure you don't lose this momentum?" And his answer was not really. Maybe he was just keeping secrets for himself, or maybe he didn't have any. But he didn't really honestly give an answer on how to stay focused when you have a long day like this. And I'm wondering it honestly. I feel like it was just burnout. They lost the momentum by the time that match came around because they had to wait for the Peeps Space Station game that went to a game 7 as well, which was a super intense match. You need to go watch that. So by the time it got to this, Space Station's coming in with a lot of momentum off of a very hard match, whereas NRG came off a 4-0 sweep. It makes sense to me that they weren't as fast or momentous as Space Station was in that match. So now Space Station, they've always said that they feel like they are the kryptonite to NRG, and they'll always have their number here. So that's a huge factor in this. But I do think NRG has a lot of smart players that could adapt and bring this a lot closer. Space Station probably still ultimately has that upper hand, but a little bit of both, probably more so on the side of Space Station just, again, being that kryptonite for NRG. So I will give the edge to Space Station just being that darn good.
Game 2, NRG won 3-0. They ran away with it. It looked like momentum was in their favor. And then 3 tight games, 1-goal games, 2 of them going to overtime. Space Station Gaming winning all of them. So that kryptonite definitely on display there. But what is this? I mean, let's even at a 10,000-foot view of the entire tournament here. You had Peeps doing well again. You had Envy with a great run. I'm really liking this Envy NRG back and forth that we're seeing, especially because they're trading victories. So seeing that almost every week is really exciting to me because we got kind of a rivalry brewing there, even though it's not necessarily. We've seen it in the finals. Here we see it in the semifinals again. And how about Alpine Esports in the quarters? I mean, they keep trucking, man. They keep earning fans every week, I feel.
Well, the fun thing, just to touch on the Envy NRG one as well, has to do with Turbo Pulse. I mean, Turbo Pulse is in North America because NRG. He was brought over from Europe because he's such a good player. He got them a world championship, and then a season after that, he gets removed from the roster due to by NRG. What they're saying is, motivation issues. So he's thrown on to Envy now. Envy, of course, is like, yeah, we're snapping him up. 4-time world champion. You can't say no to that. And Turbo's a great player. A lot of people are like, oh, we still think he's good on NRG, but obviously, some synergy stuff there. But now on to Envy. Going up against NRG, this is going to be a lot to prove. He's going to be like, look, I have the motivation and I'm going to win. So when he gets stomped 4-0 by NRG, that's huge vindication for NRG saying, no, we make the right decision here. But the back and forth is great for them because, as you said, that rivalry is accented by that roster move as well. And then to touch on what you said before too, with Alpine and all these other, even Pittsburgh Knights and all them too. You see it with all these teams that are like kind of their RLRS or their bubble teams. I think the big issue that they got stuck in before having them split, like they played in their own league plays, they didn't get a lot of experience because they didn't get scrims against all these RLCS teams. They didn't get to play. So how are you supposed to learn how those teams play if you're never playing against them? You can watch VOD, sure, but that's not the same thing as experience. So now that these teams like Alpine, like Knights, all these other teams are getting that experience. And there's so more. You saw it with Kansas City Pioneers as well. These players have been around for a while. They're good players, but they just weren't getting that scrim practice or that experience. And the grid is changing that up monumentally. And the fact that RLCS is open qualifiers now is giving so many more teams that experience that they needed. And it's going to funnel down and trickle down into the rest of the scene where all these teams are going to start getting a lot better, because you have a lot of teams that are just filled with mechanical GCs that have been grinding, wanting to be at the top for so long. So they have that drive behind them. And then you have some of these RLCS teams that may have had a little bit of complacency sink in, and that's going to allow these RLRS or bubble teams to start stepping up. And that's why we're seeing them do so well against these teams. So it'll be interesting to see how the previous RLCS teams react to this, if they do step ahead again, or if we just see the balance go across everything. I personally like the idea of having powerhouse teams that you're like, okay, I know they're going to win, because then when an upset happens, it's that much more important. But I also know a lot of people like the idea that anyone can win on any given day. I'll go for the upset potential personally. That's what I want. So I'm hoping these RLCS teams kick it into high gear again and realize, oh, we got a bunch of try hard sweat teams on our tails right now trying to take our spots. And it's possible that they can, especially in the future when these RLCS teams aren't protected for these regionals, and they'll have to qualify from the splits before.
Going back to the powerhouse teams, the grand finals, RL Stats had some interesting numbers about the final itself. Only 2 goals separated them in the entire series, 8 goals to 6. Space Station scoring 8 and NRG 6. But shots favored NRG. NRG had 48 shots in the series, and Space Station only had 37, but made 38 saves as compared to NRG's 18. So a great defensive effort there for Space Station in that grand final.
Yeah. So this is what I was saying before. When it came down to it, like, NRG are smart players. Even if Space Station Gaming is their kryptonite, you know, they may edge over them, but you look at it again, it's always within a very tight range. It's not like it's 5-2, 5-1 or anything. Like, these matches are within, as you said, over the whole series, 2 goals difference. So I think NRG are smart players, and they'll probably try to figure something out, but they're still in that phase of figuring out who's got to be where. You come off a roster before that had Garrett G and Justin pushing that offense, and Turbo being that smart third man that made sure that they kept that pressure. But you take Turbo out and you put in Squishy, who is generally, in my eyes, a playmaker, a guy that's up on offense as well. So now the question is, who fits where? Do we just rotate that on any given day? You know, hey, I don't feel offense today. I'm Justin. I'm in a slump. Do I drop back to defense now? Because he has talked about working on his defense a bit more, and that's going to have to happen. But now, while they're in that transition phase of trying to figure out what their play style is, you're going to have teams like Space Station that already has an upper hand taking these series. NRG down the road, they've got 9 to 10 months to get things together. You know, it's not like you got 2 months of league play and you're done. You got a lot of time to get it together. So NRG, I think, will start to be able to challenge Space Station Gaming, but it will take some time for sure until they figure out their own stuff.
So Garrett G even said himself, you know, that they're taking it slow, and I wonder if it's very appealing to compare the play of this season under the lens of previous timelines, right? It's difficult to break those habits because Rocket League fans and analysts have been working under those time constraints for so long. But now it's so different. So it's almost upon us as analysts, particularly people like yourself, to look at it and say, wait a minute, like, we have months and months to go, right? Like, has that been difficult to sort of step back and say, whoa, we can't write off NRG just because of a couple tournaments?
I think for some people, and you'll see this in any chat, I'm sure you're seeing it in this one as well too, where the second that a performance goes sour, someone's like, take this player off, this player's trash, this player's garbage. And we saw it all weekend too. I mean, Turbo didn't help because he went to Twitter after and he said, oh man, I'm trash. But I saw so many people in chat being like, Turbo's trash, washed. It's like, no, it's one bad performance. The scope, your perspective is already so small. Sure, in the past, one loss like this against NRG, it would have been a big thing in context of league play. But in context of multiple regionals in one split, then 3 splits over the next thing, and you also got the grid, one performance is nothing. Players are going to have a bad day. You look at it across anything competitive, whether it's sports, whether it's chess, whether it's esports, players that are at their peak or considered at the peak of that game are going to have a bad day. It's the inevitability of it. No one is 100% consistent all the time. So I think the scene mostly has to get that perspective under wraps. That one performance does not indicate a single thing. It does not indicate anything. Now, if this is a consistent thing over the next couple months, sure, but you're going to have to widen your scopes. I think you just nailed it. It's like it's a different perspective, and we have to adjust to that. So we've done a pretty good job of adjusting on the broadcast because we know how long it's going to be. Now we know that one single performance. We've already seen so much Rocket League. We know that that performance in the grid last week really doesn't mean anything because this week they showed up. You know, certain teams showed up. So as long as the fans and audience start to understand that this is a lot longer now, this is a year-long thing, I think you'll start seeing that perspective shift as well, that people won't care about one loss and one bad performance.
Let's dive into a couple more teams in NA. Peeps had a very good run in the regional as well. They got all the way to the semifinal. They had a very, very close series against Space Station Gaming, getting eliminated in 7 games. Many of those games were
Mm-hmm.
1-goal games. 2 of them went to overtime. They even won one. And actually, the only blowout really they won was game 3, where they won 3-0. So, what did you make of the Peeps' performance in the regionals? And they have 200 points on the season so far, so they've been
Yep.
doing really well.
Yeah, so I mean, Gibbs coined the new rule 1, so we can all end our arguing. The new rule 1 is don't sleep on the Peeps. That's it's been a mantra for the longest time in Rocket League since way before even just the past year, and it continues to be a thing. I mean, you saw it first time, well, not even before that, but you saw it recently with the old team with Reddles on it. When they won DreamHack, everyone's just like, their run's going to end. But then they plowed through all these top teams from both Europe and North America. And it really solidified yourself. Don't sleep on the Peeps. And then people started sleeping on the Peeps again, and especially now with Illusion, I think that's the biggest, I guess, piece that fits in with the don't sleep on the mantra, because a lot of people forget about Illusion. Excuse me. Still, I just woke up, so everything's trying to get out now. Illusion, a lot of people sleep on Illusion. They don't realize how good he is. Like, Illusion is one of the best third mans out there. This man has striking potential. When he's needed to put a move up and get those cleanup goals, he's up there getting those cleanup goals, and his accuracy is precise. But he's always a smart man and not pushing up if he doesn't need to. He holds that midfield really well, and that allows Gyro and AJ to pop off. Like, these two love offense. You've seen both of them do phenomenal things. AJ's consistency has come into question in the past, but Gyro has always just been a solid player when he's allowed free reign on offense. So Illusion is someone that I think people just always have under their radar. And I'm not saying this just because he's Canadian as well, but I really think he's one of the best third mans out there. And now he's on the Peeps. Space Station said it themselves. Reddles said it themselves that the Peeps playstyle has always been tough for them. Like, this is a tough playstyle for them to play. Now you'd think that Reddles would know how that playstyle goes, and that should give them an advantage, but it doesn't. So I think that matchup's always going to go close. Now, how well the Peeps perform against other teams is going to be a question mark, right? I mean, they took down G2, but G2 was also infamous for having really off and then really on days. So yeah. I'd like to see a little more from the Peeps before I can consistently say they're like a top 4 team, or I would give them the edge if it's a top 8 or a top 10, but a top 4 team, they're going to need to continue to prove it, and not just like they got the good draw and they faced off against teams that their play style works against. But again, you just have to keep the Peeps in the back of your mind, because if Illusion just allows those two to run full offense, that is a scary team.
Yeah, they didn't just beat G2 in the quarterfinals in the regional number 1. They beat Team House G2. G2 and
yeah. They're that's when they're supposed to be good, and they still took them down. Yeah, no, it's a good point. It is a good point to make. You joke, but that is a real thing.
I will say this, Leaf. I believe that whenever you're on this show in the future, and I'm going to formally make this pitch, it might be shot down, but nevertheless, I think you and I should have a Canadians only rankings, like a separate power ranking only for Canadians, where we rank them all number 1, and we just talk about how awesome they are for like 50 minutes.
What's the email I need to message? I'm typing up the pitch right now.
And then we're like sipping on maple syrup, and it's like, okay, so why is Illusion amazing? And it's just going on and on and on about Canada and only Canada.
Keeps his head down, stick to the ice,
Yeah,
boy knows what's good.
110% dig hard in the corners.
Just full standing.
Speaking of G2, they did defeat version 1 in Group B. Version 1 had a great stage 1, not so much in stage 2. They seemed to struggle against notable teams, did version 1. They have losses against G2, NRG, Pittsburgh Knights, and Sonics to exit the regional tournament in stage 2. Anything concerning for you for version 1 after some of the impressive matches that they've had previously?
Yeah, the hard thing right now is I keep talking about transition periods. And again, this is why I think it's so hard to make a concrete, this is definitively what's happening with this team this early on, because again, that perspective has shifted now. And they do have a bit more time to work on things. And I'm hoping teams realize that too, and they don't start jumping on roster moves as fast as they used to. Because for version 1, so AXB, again, I swear it's not because he's Canadian, but another good third man. AXB is it's funny because AXB is honestly now probably the best player on that team, whereas that never used to be the story. If you had Torment and Gimmick in talks, that well, you're already on one of the best teams. Like you throw anyone on there, that's going to be one of the best teams. This previous Cloud9 roster. And then we had issues with Torment kind of falling off. There was, I don't know what was going on. I haven't talked to him about it at all, but Torment definitely had a large slump. There was a struggle to get back to it. Gimmick had a little one as well. Gimmick bounced back faster than Torment did. And Gimmick kind of got back in the swing of things. I think he realized his pure ball chasing wasn't going to work anymore. Teams were getting smart. You were just giving away possession. And he had to readjust how he was ball chasing. He still ball chases, but he does it smarter now. And Torment was just, again, struggling. Some of his touches were just off. He just wasn't making touches he should have. And that's troublesome as a defensive player. But now he's given a little more reign to move on offense. We saw what happened when he was given room to move on offense during season 6. They won the world championship. And you have to realize the Torment was the biggest part of that. He got MVP actually. And so Torment, when he can move on offense, the man is strong. So as long as he can get himself back up to pace, that's that's the biggest question mark. He's getting there. He's looking a lot better than he had in the past. So I give him credit for putting that work in because he's looking good. The issue now is, again, the team has to find out. Gimmick having to reassess what he's doing. Torment in a completely new position. AXB, a new teammate. Gimmick and Torment are used to someone like Squishy, so they got to get used to this. It's going to take a lot of time. Version 1 has time, and they need that time to figure out what playstyle works for them. I honestly think they just don't know what playstyle to go with. I think they just don't have a playstyle. They're kind of just playing Rocket League. They're experienced RLCS veterans, so they know what to expect when playing Rocket League, but there aren't specifics to it yet. So given a little more time, I think these players will adjust to it. But I think they're kind of just going through the motions right now, and there's not a lot of structure to it. That's my take. Maybe they do have a lot of stuff they're working on behind the scenes. It just hasn't shown up yet. And I think that's why you get, to these final rounds, to the top 16, where teams do have plans. They do have things they're working on and play styles that are solid. Again, a lot of these bubble teams and RLRS teams have been together for a while. They know their play styles. It's going to hit you, and you're going to have trouble getting past that. So to me, this isn't the worst thing ever. Sure, they wanted better results, but I would if they don't bounce back in the next 2 regionals, then you start questioning if this roster is going to work.
Well, why don't we find out exactly what is happening behind the scenes? Our very own Sleegi had a chance to chat with Torment, and though I did try, Leaf, I did try to make this an all why is AXB awesome interview. That didn't happen. Sleegi actually did his job very well and asked some interesting questions to Torment about all things version 1. Here it is.
How's it going, everybody? Sleegi here with ESPN Esports, and I'm sat down with Torment today, a member of version 1, previously on Rat Enterprises and all. And Torment, first of all, just thank you for sitting down with me today.
Appreciate it. Thank you for having me, man.
Yeah, no problem. And, just getting straight into things, one of the big things I kind of wanted to ask you coming into this before we get into some of the more recent performances is just to take a step back. And, I wanted to know when Cloud9 exited the team, a team that you had been on for one of the longest standing rosters in Rocket League history, was that something that you and your team saw coming, or was it more of a sudden move that the organization made?
It was definitely a bit sudden. We originally thought we were going to be, staying with Cloud9 for the next season, but they told us, that Squishy, that they were leaving and Squishy was joining Energy at the same time, and it all came kind of all of a sudden. So it was a bit shocking, I guess, but we had a good amount of time at least to figure things out before the season started, so it wasn't like too crazy. It was easy to come back from.
Yeah, I can definitely imagine the shock that can be, especially with how long you and your teammates were playing together. And, with that, what was the sort of action plan that you guys had when looking for a new teammate, especially, again, after having played for the amount of time that y'all had together?
Yeah, so we actually wanted to change a bit up of like how we played with Squishy, after he left, obviously. So we were looking for thirds. We were just looking for someone that was solid and rotational that would, fit our play style. And we tried out a bunch of different thirds throughout the off season, and then, and eventually all that ended up not being, what we went with, because AXB just comes out of nowhere, and he gets dropped by Space Station, which was definitely a surprise to all three of us. So that was huge for us, and he was pretty much the perfect fit of what we wanted, like a rotational player that would just make us super solid as like a core.
Yeah, I mean, and it looks like it's been working out with you guys sort of early on here. You made it into the corners of week 1 of the grid. You qualify in stage 1 of the regional. So it's been there. And, obviously with you personally seen a lot of success in past events. And, I kind of just wanted to know, what are your sort of expectations for performance in this new format?
Yeah, so I mean, the end goal is to just make worlds for sure, and I think we definitely have the capabilities to do that. Getting top 6 in NA now, there's more spots than there was in the previous seasons, so I think we definitely have a good shot at that. And other than that, just consistently making it to stage or I guess playoffs, stage 3, and all the regionals, and that should give us a good chance at making worlds and all the international majors as well to make worlds.
Yeah, I mean, with this new format, there's definitely a lot more opportunities, a lot more games to be played. A lot of people have been a lot of hype surrounding this new format, especially with how it allows sort of maybe lesser known teams and players to have a chance at playing at the highest level. And, that's another thing. I was talking to Cassio about it last week, and I want to ask you the same. What are your thoughts on this new format as a whole, kind of coming away from league play and into this just everybody has an opportunity every weekend, essentially?
Yeah, I definitely the main thing I like is that, post COVID-19, we'll have all these at LAN. So that's huge for me. I love that. I always hated having most of the season, being online and just playing in my bedroom. I'd rather play on a stage, in front of everybody. And, I just think the competition is better like that. And, also with that, the openness of it is obviously kind of scary as a player that's, I think I had like 8 seasons in the RLCS, and you always felt safe keeping your spot, as long as you didn't go to the relegation tournament. But yeah, the openness is scary, but it's pretty fun. Like, I think playing all these new teams and all these new faces is interesting, and it makes it so the teams that grind more, get rewarded. You can't just hang on to your spot and sneak into playoffs with like 2 or 3 wins in a season.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know, speaking with some of the bubble players before this new format, I know a lot of frustration from them came from the difficulty it was in being able to play with these high-ranked teams. And now, maybe not as much the grid right now with how it's set up, but with all these regionals and then also places like the field. For you and version 1 as a team, what sort of focus are you guys putting respectively on these regional events, on the grid events, on places like the field, and maybe outside tournaments like Astros and others that may be floating around?
Yeah, so the outside tournaments like the field and Astros kind of get hard to do when there's so many tournaments just for the RLCS alone. There's there's like 2 regionals a month, or like 2 weekends of regionals a month, and there's 4 grids, and it's just a lot along with scrims. So those outside tournaments, like, you might not see as many teams in those. I mean, some still play all of them, but not as many. But the regionals obviously are the biggest part and the main focus. Doing well in the regionals is how you make it to the international major and eventually worlds. And
Yeah.
the grid is, I mean, the one spot the top spot goes to the international major as well. But it's mostly just good practice, like week in, week out, getting tournament experience, and there's a prize pool as well. So that's pretty nice. And it's also just a lot of fun, I think, every week. So far, I've had fun with it. So.
Yeah, it's definitely seemed like there's been a different feel around the grid. I know part of that is how they're handling sort of broadcast, allowing teams to do their own, but it definitely feels like, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong here, but it feels like the teams sort of look like they're trying different things in advance of the weekend regionals in the grid to maybe see what works and what doesn't before getting into the meat that is those weekend round robins, or at least it is for this first split.
Yeah, I could definitely agree with that a bit. I think teams are more loose and more open to trying things in the grid, because if you lose in regional, that hurts your season in general. But if you lose in the grid, it doesn't really hurt you as much. Obviously, there's an impact. Like, the grid has an impact on the season, but yeah, it's definitely a good testing ground, I guess, and a good way to kind of try new play styles. Try something out on another top team, like in a tournament environment.
Yeah, and then speaking of those regionals as well, we mentioned earlier version 1, you guys did qualify. Only 1 loss coming through, so it was a good performance in that stage 1. But looking ahead at this stage 2, your first game is going to be against NRG, a team that was performing really well throughout the offseason. They've had a little bit more up and down performances with the start of RLCS X, but they've still looked good. And I just wanted to know, how confident are you and the rest of the team at version 1 in your ability to potentially come away with what would be a huge win in the opening game of the stage 2?
Yeah, so we definitely drew the hardest possible team we could have out of the 4 possible teams we could have gotten like randomly selected against, with energy. But I mean, I'm still confident in the matchup, and I think if we play it right and counter them well enough, we can pull out a win, especially start the day. Like surprise them maybe. I don't know. We'll see. I guess. Not really sure.
Yeah, and would you say like that NRG maybe one of the top teams in your opinion in NA, or at least at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, going into the season there, I definitely had them at number one. But now seeing some of the results, probably like number three, maybe. I think G2 and Space Station have been doing a bit better than them right now, but they're still definitely one.
Yeah, and then looking across the pond as well over in the EU, I know everything is sort of set in these regionals, but I imagine you guys are having to kind of take a look at what's going on over there as well to prepare. Are there any teams right now, as far as you're concerned, that are really standing out as sort of the cream of the crop over in the EU region?
Yeah, so I mean, I would always say Vitality, even though they actually didn't end up winning the regional. BDS won the first regional for EU, so EU is kind of all over the place, but I guess BDS since they won the regional, and then maybe Vitality, they're always a threat, especially on land. When it gets to that point, by the Worlds and maybe some of these international majors, they'll definitely be a threat. Other than that, I haven't paid too close of attention, so I guess those would be the main two, though.
Okay, yeah, and I definitely agree that everything sort of changes when you get to that land environment. Like it feels like the whole atmosphere around it changes. But I appreciate your thoughts on everything. A lot of games still yet to be played this week with the grid and the regionals coming up. And before we sort of sign off here, was there anything else that you wanted to add?
Anything else I wanted to add? I don't know. I guess thank you to all the fans that support us, week in and week out. Hopefully, you tune into like our grid streams at Version One GG and support us throughout the regionals. All throughout the season, and we hope we can make worlds for you guys and get some results.
Yeah, well, I know I'm looking forward to seeing it. There's going to be a lot of good games. Version 1 is going to be involved in a lot of them. But thank you again for sitting down with me. We're going to go ahead and cut this here. But thanks, everybody, for watching as well until we get on the next one.
Sleegi's interviews weekly here on Behind the Wheel. The full interview will be available on our YouTube channel /ESPN Esports. And that interview was actually done before the weekend, which is why some of those questions might by now seem a little outdated, but still a lot of insight there. One thing that I really would love to follow up on, Leaf, is how Torment talked about regional versus grid. Now, obviously, regional is more important, but I guess I'd love to know from your point of view, how much, like, is the grid being treated by these top teams as, say, glorified scrims where they're trying new strats or new positions? What do you think?
I'd say somewhat. There's still a lot of money on the line, right? Like this is still bank that you want to put away in your wallet. But I would say that what I have been saying as well is that this is basically replacing a lot of the scrims for these players, and especially for the bubble teams. This is the chance that they get to actually play against and scrim against these top teams that they didn't get to do before. So in a way, yes, but it scrims with something on the line. So there's still more effort put in than you would just with a regular scrim. They're not trying anything super dangerous unless you're a team that's well off. You're like, okay, we know we're good. We're Space Station gaming. We don't need to win anything. We're still going to win them, but we don't need to. Maybe then you try some new stuff. But I would say it's not 100% of the teams that would be treating it like, well, let's just try new stuff and see what happens. There are definitely a good majority of the teams that are trying to win this because, again, this is extra money, an extra way to prove yourself. And you don't want to give into complacency too by being like, oh, whatever, we'll just kind of waddle on by here. So, but I would say there are definitely teams that would treat it as a more intense scrim because it is replacing, again, some of the scrims they would have been having before. So both, it's I would say it's on both, but it's not fully like nobody cares.
Well, let's see how much the grid factors into your power rankings. We change things up in case you're joining us in progress here on Behind the Wheel. You've been asking for multiple power rankings. You want to know what's happening in NA and EU, and you want it now. So that's what we're going to give you. Leaf has prepared his top 5 for both North America and for Europe. We're going to start with North America.
Start with North America? Okay.
Let's go North America first. And we're going to go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So your number 5. Well, actually, before we even start, tell me your methodology here. I'd love to know what were the biggest factors in putting your lists together.
So there's a couple factors. Obviously, placements come into play here. That's going to be a big part of any list. It should be, at least. Otherwise, you're not going to be taken seriously. But another factor into this was also how I think I've seen the teams play. There was a bit of grid influence in this as well. How I've seen teams working over the past few weeks. It's not just the regionals I looked at. I did look at grid play and those results. And then I also looked at their actual play on the field, how they're matching up against other teams, how they're matching up against the rest of their scene specifically, and how I think those play styles would affect them if they were to go against teams they haven't even played yet. So there was the results also affected by potential of the current play styles right now.
All right, let's get to our top 5. Your number 5 position for North America is?
I'm going to have a lot of people hating me for this one, but my number 5 is G2 Esports.
Spice.
Yeah, so my thing with G2, and I've been saying this for a while now, is that, and we talked to Chicago over the weekend about this as well, and he disagreed on the one thing where I said I feel like all 3 players need to be on that day. You know, that full flow state where you feel like you're playing the best Rocket League you ever played. For their play style to work properly, I think they all need to be on it. And he did kind of agree on the fact that, okay, if we want to be the best in the world, yes, absolutely right. And we think when we're all on, the play style we have is the best play style. But he said, we think our baseline is good enough. But he's also been working on a lot of stuff recently. So for me, G2 still isn't quite there yet. G2 still isn't at that we have it figured out stage. And it confirmed that with that interview with Chicago, because he's like, yeah, I've been working on more demos. I've been working on this and that. And to me, that's okay. Well, you're working on something that's not there yet. This is stuff you haven't done before. You're still working this into your process. So for me, G2 is still a threat. Even at their base level, G2 is still a threat, but their consistency continues to plague them and continues to be a problem for me that I can't place them higher than the other teams that I have on this list. So for me, G2 is a number 5 with that potential to move up there, but they are still in that top 5.
So they, in the North America regional, pardon me, is this the regional that I'm looking at? Or yeah, it is the regional. They beat version 1 in stage 1. They were able to also defeat Rogue in stage 2, got swept by Space Station, and then in the quarterfinals, they bowed out to Peeps in a 5-game series. In the grid, they lost in the quarterfinals to Space Station Gaming. So not a great, they got swept both times they played Space Station Gaming this week across all competition. So yeah, Team House G2, a little bit of work to do.
This is what I'm saying. It's like, it's there, and we know that they're a good team. We know that their play style when all are on is phenomenal, is probably one of the best teams in the world. The issue is it's not consistent. It's constantly this roller coaster of up and down. So I can't say, well, you get a higher spot on my list if you're not consistently playing to that level. So for me, if they can get that consistency, they will move up the list for sure.
Who's number 4?
My number 4 for North America is one of the teams they took down, actually, and it's Rogue. For me, this is the exact opposite. It's the consistency has been amazing for these guys. Now you go, I said it, G2 at their best will beat anybody in North America, even a Space Station Gaming, I think. That'll be tough, but even a Space Station Gaming. So it's no surprise to me they took down Rogue. Again, perspective. This is one regional so far. I really think that Rogue's consistency after bringing Turo on has just been phenomenal. You allow First Killer and Turo to go up on offense. It is just unbelievable what these guys can do, right? Now, some people question Crow. I think Crow's a great player as well. And he does complement them well as that backup, that third man. And then when Crow is feeling hot, he can move an offense as well. But all you need on offense is Turo and First Killer. That's all you need. They're 2 young kids that are still in their prime. Their reflexes and mechanics are phenomenal, and they do consistent damage. I mean, in all honesty, this is the first time I think that you can actually come out and say, yeah, I'm proud to be a Rogue fan, because before that, they'd always come just short, and now they're starting to push waves. So I was surprised that they didn't make it to the top, in all honesty. But again, this is one performance out of the next 10 months. So for me, Rogue consistency is what put me up. You could have flipped in the future G2 and Rogue. but it's that consistency for me that made the difference.
Some people might be like, well, why are they even in your top 5 at all? They didn't get past stage 2. They had bad performances against NVG2, Alpine. It just didn't seem like they were a team. Like you said, you were surprised that they didn't make the quarterfinals, but they definitely, especially in that last match against Alpine, they let it slip away. So how despite not making the playoffs of the regional, which I guess would be one of the bigger factors in putting together the top 5, or at least in terms of recent results, how does Rogue still land in number 4 based on that?
Well, I mean, when you look at the other teams that are in there, sure, okay, look at the Peeps, for instance. The Peeps made it to the semifinals and went to Game 5 against Space Station Gaming. But where's the consistency? Have you seen them? They've made it, I think, once into the grid finals, into the grid top 8, and then they got 3-0'd right away. Am I supposed to put that team just because they did good in the regional? Again, I'm looking at all results here, and Rogue's gotten further in the grid consistently than they have. They've made it to 2 semifinals now. Rogue has, and again, top 16. Sure, this sucks. They fell at this weekend, but that's one regional. The consistency, though, over the past few weeks is what factored into this. Now, if they continue to not make top 8s in the grid, and this is going to change for sure, but they've shown me that they are one of those top teams right now, and I believe they're going to continue doing that. So, looking at all the other teams that are in the top 8 for the regional, none of the, I'm not putting Alpine in my top 5 in North America. I'm not putting Sonics in there. The Peeps are starting to make an argument, and they might be in that 6th place spot right now. But there's and the Knights, no, I'm not having those guys in my top 5. There's no other choice really than Rogue based off that consistency.
So this is, I love that this is definitely going to incite, and I can already see it in chat. It's inciting great conversation based on where Rogue is. I mean, they're 9th in North America right now in points at 100 points, but only 50 points behind 2 of the teams that you mentioned, Alpine and Sonics, who are at 150. So definitely striking distance, very, very close. But still, like you said, those 2 teams not in your top 5. Spoiler alert, pardon us. But Rogue in the 4th position. So that brings us to the top 3. Who is number 3 in your list?
I think these 3 are probably going to be pretty on nose for most people's. I'd be surprised if they weren't. Number 3 is Envy for me. I talked about one of the factors I looked at is the potential on this team and what they've been doing. Envy, obviously. I mean, they're going, you'd mentioned it before, toe to toe with NRG, who's always been considered a top team in North America. I think it's no surprise that Envy, with a 4-time world champ on there, is great. Mist, he is just nuts. Mist is just a crazy player, and Atomic also has that crazy potential. If Atomic can harness being able to play at his best all the time, and Turbo Pulsa, doesn't do weird things on the field. Well, he probably will continue to do weird things on the field, but Turbo Pulsa is a smart player, one of the smartest players in Rocket League. And he's going to continue to be in spots that help Mist and Atomic make offense. So Team Envy has to be in my top 3. If you don't have Team Envy, at least in your top 5, I don't even know what you're doing.
I think 3 is definitely fair. I agree. They lost in the regional semi 4-0 versus perhaps another team that is on this list, NRG, and lost in the grid quarterfinals to Rogue 3-2. So there you go, a battle of top 5 teams as we're jockeying for position here in our NA power rankings that Leaf is providing to us this week. So I love the rival, and I mentioned this before, Leaf, but I just love the rivalries that are emerging. As storylines, and NRG versus Envy right now, just based on top level competition. I don't believe the teams hate each other or anything, but there's definitely a lot of storyline there in terms of just 2 giant teams with great players and championship pedigree battling it out in the past as well, like we've seen with the Brawl, 4 championships. So it's great.
Yeah, no, I think, again, the storyline, we touched on it earlier in the show here as well, that not only is it the back and forth when it comes to playing sets against each other, it's also that Turbo Pulsa off NRG fighting his previous team, the whole reason that he's in North America right now. So I like that story. And I think they'll look at, again, consistency seems to be a factor in a lot of these decisions here, but Envy's consistency is not as wavy as G2's, but it's definitely, they're still just trying to figure out how to maintain always being good and being the best. But they're pretty close, and they're better than I would say Rogue and G2, which is why they're my number 3.
Who do you have at number 2 in your power rankings?
Again, I feel like these should be obvious. NRG at my number 2. NRG is obviously working on some things. Again, we touched on this earlier in the show. I'll reiterate if anybody didn't catch it, that they moved in Squishy. They took Turbo off. I thought Turbo was a great fit. I think Turbo is a phenomenal fit for that roster. So when they took him off, I had question marks. I started saying, well, where's Squishy going to fit? Is he playing a bit more defensively? Squishy's good at defense, but I know he's a great playmaker and I want him up there. Garrett, I know, loves to be on that offense as well. But Justin is also an offense guy. So how's this going to work on the field? How are the rotations going to work? And it turns out that, well, all those players really, really wanted some really short passing to each other. You know, not those cross field passes or from the side to center box like we see from teams like Dignitas. These are short, quick passes that hit each other inside the box. All three players come in there passing the ball back and forth, and that's been working really well for them. I do think they have a couple things to work on here and there, and Garrett's mentioned it himself that they need a little more time just to get things under wrap here. But I really think the motivation from all three of these players, you'd see Justin always concerned about his play, saying that he's in a slump, even though he's still getting triple flip reset, double taps. And then you have Squishy, who's consistently been on Twitter saying, I'm sorry, I feel like I'm not performing to what I should be, guys. That's motivation. That's showing that these guys want to be the best. And you know, Garrett G has some of the best resolve in Rocket League. So with these three players working towards a goal and they're already this good, they have to be at the number 2, potentially number 1 very soon, but they still have that kryptonite, as we mentioned before. So NRG being at my number 2, I feel is like, that's no hot take at all. That's right where they should be.
Yeah, I don't think number 1 is a hot take either. NRG lost in the regional final to Space Station Gaming 4-1 this past week. Lost in the grid final to Space Station Gaming 4-2. So why is Alpine Esports at number 1, Leaf? Tell us.
Okay, what am I, Shogun right now? Thinking they're going to win the whole thing? Oh my God, yeah, of course.
Shout out to Alpine. I just love their social media. Like they're like the little engine that could, right? I just love how they've embraced it, and it's just like they're wholesome. I just love it. Anyway.
Well, speaking of good social media, the team I have at my number 1 also has pretty good social media, and that's what I like to see from teams interacting with communities. And it's Space Station Gaming. I mean, we're dragging it out as if it was a big surprise, but Space Station Gaming they're the best right now in North America. And this surprised me. Before this season started, before the grids, all this, hearing Reddles move on to this roster, I would not have had them at my number 1 at all. I just I wouldn't have. When I see that mixture of players, I'm like, that feels like they're going to have G2 problems, but even worse, where they're just giving up open nets. I'm like, this is going to be pure offense. Something I liked about AXB was that he let Sypical and Arsenal hand off that ball real quick. Those guys were so good at reading each other, knowing who was going to take the ball when. I'm going to get a touch here, but actually I'm going to fake it. Now you're going to take it. It's going to drop down and you're going to dribble it in. Those two were really good on offense. AXB was good at giving them that space to work it, coming in and cleaning up when he needed to. So when you put Reddles on, another player that is mad aggro, you're like, they're just going to get in each other's faces. And that has not been the case. I will say I'm pleasantly surprised by how Reddles has fit onto this team. We talk again in interviews with him where he's like, yeah, man, I just told them. I said, put me on the roster. Put me on the roster. They wouldn't do it. But now they finally put me on the roster and we're winning. And I told them we'd win. We're not going to lose if I'm on that roster. And it's true. I mean, lose here and there, but they're consistently in those top spots. So Space Station Gaming, I think where they are now, like a 14 win streak, I think, which is just phenomenal, especially given how good a lot of the other teams are in North America.
Right?
Is it series? Yeah. Series 14 series in a row is just like, that's a crazy streak. So Space Station Gaming has surprised me, I will say, but it's been a pleasant surprise because watching them play is just great. But you do have, again, some of those teams where their play style is going to be troublesome, like the Peeps. They mentioned it. Space Station's like, that team's always, it's going to be hard for us every single time. So that's the coolest thing about Rocket League is that it does end up in like a rock, paper, scissors, stick, and a bunch of other weapons that all counter each other. Always
go dynamite. Always,
you always go. Well, that's what they're doing right now. I mean, like Space Station is the dynamite for NA, but I'm sure some people will figure out how to put that fuse out soon. But they're going to have a reign for a little bit of time here. So seeing them all be able to hand off in transition, who's on that offense, and do the same handoffs that Sypical and Arsenal had, and allowing Reddles to actually mix in with that as well, has been really, really fun to watch. And again, Space Station, they're the number one, and that's undeniable. If anybody doesn't have their number one, you can just leave now.
Couple more things before we move on to EU. Evhan in the chat says, NRG probably have the best individual players, but I feel like they need to start playing smarter like SSGR. What do you make of that statement?
I totally missed the first part of that. If you could repeat the question.
No problem. Evhan in chat says, NRG probably have the best individual players, but I feel like they need to start playing smarter like Space Station are.
I mean, Sypical and the rest of the Rocket League community would argue with the best individual player on that one. But I think Reddles is also great. But I think overall, you're right. The individual powerhouse of a lot of these players is really good. Garrett G, I wouldn't say is, like one of the most mechanically insane players or anything. It depends what you call like best individual. Is this player just have the best mechanics? Are they the smartest? Because then you also throw Turbo Pulse in talks for that. Is Justin just his mechanics? Squishy Muffin's got a bit of both there, but a lot of mechanics. I would say they're pretty close to, I guess overall, I could agree with the statement. But it's still like, what do you determine as an individual, being the best as an individual? Because I think between Garrett, Justin, and Squishy, they're all individually better at different things. But this is why I also say I think they could be at number one, because like they are all complementary to each other once they figure out where everyone needs to be. So I will say I will agree with that statement overall, because all the other teams just have some of the best players, but like maybe the whole roster isn't. Yeah, I can vibe with that.
So chat is definitely still debating on the latter half of the power rankings here, particularly Rogue. I guess like this brings up, I guess, who the biggest snub would be, and that's the Peeps, given where they are in North America and some of their more recent results. Take us through the methodology. Like, where do you see the Peeps right now, and what are you expecting? What would you expect from them in order to break the top five?
What I want to see from the Peeps is more consistent results in stuff like the grids. The grid, I know that, again, you can't look at those. They are weighted less than regionals, obviously, for me, but I need to see another consistent result in the next regional. Then the Peeps may jump up, but I can't change what my top five is in North America until I see that next regional, because that's going to factor in now how well can these teams continue to perform, because that's weeks away after a bit of time has passed, and against other teams. So for me, the Peeps will have to continue to show that. I think they're right there. They're literally like, if you extended my list a bit, they're probably number 6. Like they're probably sharking right there. Actually, I would say they are right there. If you guys want it, Peeps are in my number 6. Once I see that more, my big factor was AJ. I think AJ is a phenomenal player, but there were a lot of consistency issues with him. There were days where it's just like, what is going on right now? This is not what we expect from AJ. This is not what we want from AJ. And I want to see if that pops up again. Once that question is quelled and I don't have to worry about that anymore, yes, guys, you'll likely see the Peeps move up there if teams like Rogue or G2 can't step it up. Those would be the teams that they jump in. But my top 3 is solid right now. I don't think most, unless Envy really bags it, but the Peeps could move into there. But this is what happens when you have a lot of good teams, is someone's not going to make the top 5.
And to your point about consistency, they've made a grand total of $0 in the grid across 3 events so far this season. Their best finish is a 5th to 8th spot finish in the most recent grid. So there is progress there. And they had a great semifinal match against Space Station, taking them to Game 7 in the regional. So maybe people are looking at that result and saying, look how good they did in the regional. But to your point, maybe there needs to be a little bit more proof of concept before they start breaking consistently the top 5 in the power rankings. So that's where we're going to leave it. And guess what? Since this is a top 5, the Peeps don't make it. There is no 6. So sorry, Peeps.
they're on their own second
top
list.
5. Yeah, exactly. Our second list actually will be in EU. Let's go through your power rankings for Europe, the top 5 there. Maybe number 1, will be a lock for many people anyhow, but let's go through where you see the other teams. Number 5.
So I want to preface this with, this list may look significantly different than other people's lists, because I got to say right now, Europe is so fun right now. I love Europe Rocket League. It is all over the place. There are so many good teams. And this list was a hard one to put together. In all honesty, this was a difficult list to put together. Even my number 5, I'm like trying to figure out who's going to be in that. I would say the next even 5 teams in the top 10 probably could have stuck their way up into the like top 4 to 7 slots. Like, it's all a mix match. So with that said, my number 5 right now may come with a little bit of bias. And it's Liquid. Just the potential.
Spice.
I've been on it for so long. I love Cooks here. And I want them to do good. Everyone says they're going to do good, and then they always just fall a little bit short of what I want them to do, but they've been doing okay. Their consistency again is a little, but I'm kind of used to that now. But this is what I'm saying. There may be a bit of bias with the Liquid pick here. But for me, it's like, I love Cooks here. I think that he's going to work his team together. I think Speed, when he's on point, he just sometimes takes some time to warm up. I think if they can get that from the beginning of a series, start running, I think they'll be they'll do a lot better. And then Fruity is just a pretty smart player, pretty smart, solid player. Do I think he's one of the best players in Europe? Probably not. But at the same time, he's a good player. So I have Team Liquid in there, and they may have been edged up over some of those other teams. As a result, you could have had teams like Blokes, BDS. There was a bunch of other teams that could have been there. I'm sure there's some potential fight for Guild to be up there.
Mm-hmm.
In all honesty, it's like there are a lot of options. Could have been 5. So I'll admit the bias is there for Liquid.
So, well, now the conversation is going to turn to last week. Shogun did not have Team Liquid in his top 5.
Mm-hmm.
On top of that, their results have not been the greatest so far this season, in particular the first regional and the most recent grid. So how much of this is you believing in this team and saying, you know what, it's still early in the season, the potential is very high here, I see a lot of good things for this team, as opposed to most recent results?
Counterpoint to that, Oxygen also didn't do good in the first regional, and then they started playing really well afterwards in the grid. So this is why I still take the grid into factor, and overall consistency across weeks. One day of performance cannot really dictate how good a team is. You have to look at the play style and the potential as well. All these things factor into it. This is a 10-month long series now with Season X. And just having one performance, sure, it's in the regionals, it's important, but there are more regionals coming up. We got another regional coming up this weekend, and we can see how they can perform. And I think they're going to do way better than they did last time. I see for sure top 16 and very likely a top 8 finish for Liquid. But at the same time, again, this region is stacked right now.
Mm-hmm.
This region is stacked.
One last question on Liquid before we move on to the rest of your list. What's up with the coaching situation with Liquid? They don't want a coach. They're looking for a coach. What is the latest that we know in terms of Team Liquid getting a coach for this team?
Good question. Lawler might have more insight than me. I know he talks to a lot of players and that. So quick swap out guess.
Lawler can tell us in chat. That's fine.
Yeah. I think Liquid has just always said, was it Speed that says you don't need a coach? I'm not sure.
Someone mentioned that in chat.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Speed's just not really in for that. I don't know how Cookser feels on that because he doesn't really talk a lot. I think he's a smart player and can do a lot of the decision making himself as well. So I think that's why we see Liquid without a coach. But again, you'll have to get someone with a bit more confirmation on that.
Our Twitch chat correspondent Lawler might have some insight, and he'll throw it in chat if he does have any insight. If he's still here, he doesn't have to be here. All right, let's go through the list here. I know that we're running a little bit over time here on the show. Number 4.
Okay, number 4 for EU. This was a tough one again as well. But I have to say Triple Trouble as my number 4. Yeah. Again, I told you my EU1 might be all over the place here, but triple trouble is what I have to see. I mean, like we talk about the grid and the regionals have a different amount of weights here, but the fact that triple trouble is consistently placed into the grid, didn't they won one? Yeah, they won week 1 against Oxygen, who's a really good team. And then I just think overall the potential of triple trouble has been good. I think people are sleeping on him. I think it's a peep situation where people are just sleeping on him right now. Bluey can just go ham. Tadpole has consistently had so much drive behind him. We look over the past seasons of how much drive and emotion Tadpole puts into this game is just phenomenal. I think that drives the team a lot. So that's just good vibes for sure. I know there were issues before with Bluey and sometimes his comms and that, but I feel like Tadpole's someone that can balance him out pretty well here. And I gotta say it, I feel like Germany is on the rise with players right now, and Calix is one of those guys. You look at Tox as well. Like some of these Germans are starting to step up. So that's why I'm keeping my eye on triple trouble right now. I think this is a team that people are sleeping on.
They lost in stage 2, the first regional in EU. Of course, like you said, the next EU regional is this weekend, and they lost 4-0 in the semis in grid number 3 to Vitality, which is definitely an honorable loss considering how great Vitality is. Number 3.
All right, my number 3 right now, I talked about this team already a few times, is Oxygen. I know that, again, in the regionals, they dropped out just like Liquid did as well, but you got to look at the grid. I think Europe takes the grid more seriously than North America. I think so. This is why the grid results have been a lot more of a factor in my Europe picks, because I do think that Europeans are just, there's a seriousness to them when they play this game. This is business. This is serious time, and we're getting into it. It's not just playing Rocket League and having fun. This is business time. So Oxygen's performances after obviously that surprising fallout from regionals has to be in Tox. I mean, you bring one of the best players in the world in Astral over. You just need time to fit him in. Farah is an incredibly good leader. If there's any team that never needs a coach, it's Oxygen Esports. Farah, I mean, you even talked to Yummy Cheeseman before, who used to work with these guys. He's like, there wasn't much I could do because Farah is just a leader, right? Like Farah did a lot of the work. And Shazette was a question mark for a while. Also, some people consider him the best player in the world. Fell off a bit. I think he just needs some time to bounce back. This team is filled with veteran players alongside a superstar player. There's no way they can't continue to do good. So Oxygen Esports at my number 3 because of that performance in the grid after the regionals.
Yeah, so they lost in stage 1 in the regionals, but most recently they lost in the quarterfinals to, of all teams, Barcelona. We haven't talked much about Barcelona this season because they haven't been doing so well, but they did have an impressive run most recently. But they are not in the top 5, spoiler alert. But let's find out who is in Leaf's top 2. Who is number 2? Your runner-up.
So Barcelona kind of hit my radar, and this is why I thought also, by the way, sorry, my camera may have just overheated, so I'll be back in a second here.
That's okay.
But the Barcelona was kind of in talks, but I think they're kind of in that floating around that 7, 8, 9, 10 spot, maybe. If they can get it together. They've seen some pop-off performances, but you're right. They're not in the top 5, so let's not talk about them. My next one up has to be the Giants. Oh my goodness, the Giants have just been storming. Man, you see this crazy aggression from the Spanish players. And again, I mentioned Tox before for a reason. Tox is one of those German players I was talking about starting to step up huge. And it seems like anytime Tox goes on a team, they just suddenly start getting good. So I got a lot of love for Giants right now, especially with their performances recently. So they're at my number 2.
There he lost in the grid number 3 final to Vitality. Gee, I wonder who's at number 1, Leaf.
Formidable loss. Again, I don't count losing to Vitality into these rankings at all. You can't. It's Vitality. But yeah, if we're looking at my number 1, then, well, it's Vitality. Big surprise. Big surprise. NA was a little more consistent in the top 3 or top 5 even overall, I think, whereas EU was very difficult to pick except for that number 1 spot. Vitality is just consistently good. Sure, teams are starting to contest up against them, but even at their worst, Vitality is so good. They're so efficient. With someone like K-Dop on the team, that it's just so phenomenal how efficient. You're like, why isn't he going up for a flip reset or a ceiling shot right now? Oh, it's because he can save boost by standing on the ground, coming off the wall, and just taking a straight shot without even air rolling. He can do those things if he needs to, but the efficiency of Vitality is what sets them ahead. They have all those little things. They do those little things that make the big differences. So Vitality consistently stays as a top team because of that.
So your top 5: Vitality, Giants, Oxygen, Triple Trouble, and Team Liquid. Let's talk about some of the notable omissions. Of course, BDS and Top Blokes will be the ones that people talk about the most, simply because they are at the top of the standings right now in points in EU. What was your methodology, and where do you see them in a proverbial top 10?
So this was tough, and this is why I prefaced this at the beginning about Europe, that the Blokes or BDS could have been in top 5. Absolutely. And if you have them in your top 5, I am not going to argue that. I think this mid-range outside of Vitality is so close in Europe. And that's why Europe is so exciting right now. We have the two separate things. I talked about this before. In North America, we have the teams that are so good and expected to win that when they lose, it's exciting. But then in Europe, we have the flip side where everybody is so good that anybody could win, that it's exciting. So right now, if you had Blokes or BDS in your top 5, I would not have fought you. Guild makes a talks for that 7-6 kind of spot. Honestly, Endpoint is in there. A lot of people are questioning their play style with Virtuoso and that. Mets and Aris also needs to start hitting the net instead of the post. And because there was in the grid the other day, there was a 4.5 minute overtime. He had 14 shots as opposed to everyone else's 3 to 4 shots. And then the match before that, he had 7 shots in regulation time. So if Mets and Aris can hit the net, I think they're going to be better off too. But I see them in that top 10 as well for sure. Again, there's a bunch of teams that kind of could have been placed in that, I'd say 3 to 7 range. Really could have shifted a lot. I really would not argue other people having some other people in there. So if anyone can come up with a Europe one that's better than mine and definitively, then I'll give you $1 million, because you can't do it. Europe is all over the place, and that's what's making it beautiful right now.
$1 million does sound good. I think a lot of people would like to ask more questions, like, how do I determine this? How am I going to get this $1 million? Anyway,
this is what I'm saying. I guess the way is, if you can make a top 5 that nobody argues for Europe.
Oh, that's impossible.
Or that even if you can make a top 5 that even 80% of fans don't argue, then sure. But I guarantee you can't.
That is true for most top 5s in anything, let alone esports, but definitely Europe Rocket League right now. Yeah, for sure.
If you can find even 20% of people that won't argue, that's what I'm saying.
The number keeps coming down. If you can find 4%,
you can find 5 people.
If you can find 3 people, that's it. Just give me 3 people that agree.
Agree with it.
That's it. All right, listen, we have gone very over on this show. The conversation just basically flows when you have 2 Canadians like us on the show.
Yeah. So
but before we go, exactly, we do have another fan favorite segment that y'all have been clamoring for, and we're going to endeavor to bring it to you every single week, and that is the top 10. This week, we present to you our ESPN Esports top 10 saves from this week. Enjoy.
That whip might slow down the offense here. Safety trying to clear it away for Sonics.
Shock will find the point. J-Russ next up. He won't get to this challenge in time, but he'll find the read right off the first touch and the second touch, but the shot will not be forthcoming for Sonics. Don't want to overcommit, but Andy's got the 1v1. By and no! Shock yet again on defense. He's been reliable pretty much every single time.
Were best of 7s, and both of them were 4-2 wins for Space Station. But perhaps most worryingly for NRG is that the last 4 games that these two teams played were all won by Space Station. 4 in a row after NRG took 2 before it. That's not a bad start though. Oh, Squishy off the inside of the post. Now he's looking for the same top corner. He's hit the bar. Oh well, Squishy's tested the woodwork a couple of times in the first minute.
Saved by XB. And good patience up top on the backboard as well from Torment. You can see him like a hawk. But a chance to close it out. They play the shot on target. And beast mode with the last second effort able to get back. This could be dangerous. It's going to drop down. Can they look out for the play? Unfortunately, at 0 seconds, Memory's going to win it.
Oh, Nolly with a cheeky little flick on goal there. It's coming. It's coming.
Yeah, you get the feeling that if they can just avoid giving away that silly early goal, they'll be in a much better spot. All right, now Triple Trouble. I've got much better time to read it. Oh, what a save!
What a save!
How on earth has Nolly kept that out?
By Andy, it's by 2 defenders. Shock trying to buy some time. Snappy rotating behind him. Shock will get the first touch, but now on front line, it's Beastabonium for the first. Andy for the second. He stops it, and coming in, oh no, tying up. Beastabonium had a clear angle. Now J-Rust, he has Shock up in the air. Andy has the save. It's out to the side. Beastabonium spawns the savior for overtime.
That's almost irrelevant right now. You've got to go and just make sure you get contact. How good that contact is almost completely unimportant. You've just got to make sure NRG are not getting what they want.
Yeah, it's a tough one to execute on. The Alpine, oh, that's a good fake, actually. Parsi now 1v1 with Justin, who's gone high and down low again. Oh my goodness, Justin.
Oh, it's happened again.
How did he manage to do that? The Garrett's going to convert the counter-attack. I honestly have no idea how Justin managed to dive all the way down to the ground after committing to the in and out save off the top of the bar. That's incredible.
They're going to try and make this happen. Astral with a dunk. It's going to land pretty close to net here.
Oh!
Miss.
Oh,
no! What a save!
Oh, what? Barca!
The saves by Barca, incredible on this goal line.
Bouncing out to the middle. Shock centers. Matthews there. Matthews shot wide. Shock centers it. J-Rust. This shot. It's saved. The bump. It doesn't go in. Version 1 survive.
Able to rotate in just in time. That's the reason why you always want at least one player in constant motion. You can leave a few players on the goal line. If that goes off the backboard and you're unable to get to it, you need someone else. There's the open net. Torrentoro will keep it out. No better save out in the world than just you taking a missed shot.
Finds him. Garrett G comes in to clean it up, and Reddle should be able to push this one to safety. 20 seconds left. Only the 1 goal game, though. We can play this 0 second time. Oh, the pinch off the crossbar. Squishy's follow-up's not good. Garrett gets blocked in front of the net. Space Station defense holds him. Finds him. Garrett G comes in to clean it up, and Reddle should be able to push this one to safety. 20 seconds left. Only the 1 goal game, though. We can play this 0 second time. Oh, the pinch off the crossbar. Squishy's follow-up's not good. Garrett gets blocked in front of the net.
You a top 10 pretty much every single episode here on Behind the Wheel. And if you have any suggestions on types of top 10s that you would like to see, we saw goals, we saw saves this week. If you have any other suggestions, throw them in chat or tweet us at ESPN_esports. Leaf, what's coming up for you, my man?
Just on that, you definitely need to have like a top 10 why were they there moments of players just out of position that turn into a goal. That'd be great.
And just like a spotlight there, circle with the magistrator, like they're right here, bad out of position. Yeah.
But it works. Yeah, no, for me next, of course, I got coming up is the grid. I cast for the Pittsburgh Knights, come over there. And then I also am doing casting for Dignitas. That's always been fun. I just make fun of Jesse the entire time. So it's been memes. And I'm also streaming, on my own Twitch channel, Liefx, and Squad as well, too. So you can just find me on Twitter, twitter.com/Liefx. You'll find all the things I'm doing there.
Of course, the grid is weekly, so you can look forward to those as well in terms of Rocket League competition. Like Leaf said, the EU Regional number 2 starts August 29th and will end on September 6th. The NA Regional number 2 will begin on September 12th, so you got a little bit of a wait there. Before we go, though, in case you missed the start of the show, big revelation, Leaf has a new addition to the streaming setup. This will destroy all other streaming. Look at that. Look, come on. Look at this.
Is it upside down? It's upside
Have a
down.
great week, everybody. There it is. There's a dab. We'll just end on that. Have a good week,
stuff.
Rocket League fans. Thanks for tuning into Behind the Wheel. How else? What a better way to end the show. Look at that thing. It's beautiful. Yeah. Bye.